Yo, what's going on, everyone? It's Brian here with DrinkABeerandPlayAGame, and today I'm going to be talking about some of the earliest Alien video games. Jim and I are super excited because we're finally going to be covering a lot of the Alien video game titles in our reviews, but there are some games that might not warrant an entire review. For any game we don't cover together, you can always check it out on our site in the links below. Now, just as a warning, this coming month or so, we won't be covering any Alien vs. Predator games because that's its own thing. With just the Alien franchise alone, there's over 20 or 30 different games we could have reviewed, but I'm sticking to the most popular ones. So I really hope you enjoyed today's video. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit that subscribe and like button and let us know what you think of the games below. Let's get started. Let's start this review by talking about Alien on the Atari 2600. Developed and released in 1982 by Fox Video Games, this is the first video game adaptation of the classic 1979 film of the same name. In its simplest form, the Alien game on the Atari 2600 is nothing more than a Pac-Man clone. Although there are a few differences. For one, you have a flamethrower that can momentarily stun the aliens. It's not super useful, but it is kind of cool. And you also have a mini-game after each level that feels like a Frogger clone. So there is a decent amount here, but it is still very simple. The game looks decent enough, even though I have no idea how this is supposed to be a xenomorph, but I guess we can give it a pass. The sound, on the other hand, is very rough. While I can appreciate them trying to give the alarm sound from the films, why doesn't it stop? And mix in the constant walking sound, you have a recipe for annoyance. Putting the graphics and sound aside, this is actually a fun game and one of the better Pac-Man clones. I would suggest giving it a try. Next, we have Alien, developed by Concept Software and published by Argus Press Software. Released 2 years later after the Atari game in 1984. This game was released on the Commodore 64, ZX Spectrum, and the Amstrad CPC. In the same vein as a lot of Commodore 64 and mini-computer games, the gameplay takes place in the form of menus and text. Your goal is to manage all the remaining members of the Nostromo and navigate them throughout the ship to find items in order to kill the alien. And I gotta say, the little animation showing the alien looks great. There's a lot you have to manage throughout the game, such as the crew's mental state, items, and the eventual reveal that one of the crew, Ash, is actually an android that will turn on you. So they actually follow the film pretty closely. I played for a decent amount of time, and I really sucked at this game. But I have never been known as someone with patience, so if you like strategy and menu-style gaming, then this is a good adaptation of the film. Personally, it's not my type of game, but I appreciate what they went for. Next, let's move on to our first adaptation of the Aliens film. With Aliens the Computer Game. Developed and published by Activision, this game was released in 1986 on the Commodore 64, the Apple II, and the ZX Spectrum. This is a major enhancement to the graphics and sound in these Alien games so far. With the game playing as a direct adaptation to the film, you have 6 mini-games to play through, which are all fairly unique. The first minigame is a first-person flying simulator, which has you transporting Ripley and the Marines to your destination. It's simple, but it actually has a really cool effect. And I'm surprised they were able to pull this off on these early consoles. The second game is a semi-isometric view of the Marines, which you can switch between as you explore the base on LV-426. While controlling a Marine, you have the ability to shoot down any aliens you encounter. Let's talk about these graphics. The xenomorphs look great for the time, and I really like all the little monitors and heart rate sensors that simulate the film. And of course, now you have the motion tracker. All nice little touches, very simple little mini game here, but it is fun. The third section of this game is a gallery shooter that is reminiscent of the Back to the Future diner level, which will have you facing a horde of these xenomorphs. I know other games have done it, but that was the first one that popped in my head. The fourth section is a maze-like game that now has you moving through the operations room, avoiding aliens in the dark as Newt and Ripley. The fifth minigame is the same as the second one, although this time you are playing as Ripley, who needs to find and escort Newt through the level. And you even have little flares just like in the films. The sixth and final section is the big battle with the Queen, in almost a Punch-Out style with you operating the exoloader. I really dig the look of the Queen, and let's be honest, this is one of the most memorable scenes from the movie, so I love that they throw it in here like this. This is a really fun game, and as you can tell, there is a ton to do. For such simple graphics, they manage to pull off a lot. It follows the movie pretty well and is not typically talked about. So if you're a fan of Aliens, I would definitely say give it a try. Alright, next we have Aliens the computer game. Yes, the same title as the previous game. This was developed by Software Studios and Mr. Micro and published by Electric Dream Software. Commonly referred to as the European version, the game came out in 1987 on the Amstrad CPC, the Commodore 16, the Commodore 64, and the ZX Spectrum. The game is played from a first-person perspective and is set on the atmospheric processing plant with over 250 rooms to explore. The goal is to reach the Queen and her eggs and kill them all. You have the ability to control 6 of the characters from the film, and you must defeat all aliens you encounter along the way, as well as these biomasses that are on the walls, or they will generate more eggs and aliens that you're going to have to deal with later. The game looks decent enough, but the sound is really lacking, because 95% of the time, there is no sound. While the game is okay, I think it lacks a lot, especially comparing it to the US Aliens computer game, in terms of gameplay and what's available. It's not bad, but it could have been much better, so you can probably avoid this one. The final game in today's video was a Japanese exclusive for the MSX. The game was published and developed by Square, which would eventually become Square Enix, and released in 1987. You play as Ripley, who is stuck on a planet and must fight her way to freedom. This is an interesting game, because at its core, it is just a basic side-scrolling shooter. But first, let's talk about Ripley. And, I don't remember the red jumpsuit or red hair. She actually reminds me more of April O'Neil. Now, let's talk about the jumping. I mean, I guess because you're on another planet, gravity isn't the same as Earth, so these long jumps may make sense. But man, they are so annoying while you actually play, because you are stuck in that animation. Now, I can forgive both Ripley and the jumping, but what the hell is this? The enemies are designed like JPEGs with a black border. It's like they couldn't make the background transparent. My favorite is when the facehuggers or aliens fall with the blocks to the ground. Now, maybe it's a limitation of the MSX, I don't know, I don't have much experience with the system, but this was definitely the first for me ever seeing something like this. Okay, now that I'm done shitting on the game, let's talk about the good parts. The soundtrack is really well done and is actually composed by Nobuo Uematsu, best known for his work in the Final Fantasy series. The game also offers all the weapons from the movies, and the xenomorphs, especially the Queen, actually look great. Even some of the backgrounds in the game are really well done. Here's the thing, this game is not memorable or a must-play, but regardless of its faults, you can have fun playing it. And that soundtrack may even get stuck in your head. If you are brave enough to fight off all the JPEG xenomorphs, then you will see a heartwarming embrace between Ripley and Newt. If you find an easy way to play this one, I say give it a go. Alright guys, so that wraps up today's review. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Maybe there are some titles here you've never heard of. I know before I started doing research, I didn't know at least half of this list, and I like that each Alien game tried something a little different. While these games might not be super memorable, they are all unique, and if you're a true fan of the series, some of them might be worth looking into. Make sure you comment below which ones were some of your favorites, which ones have you tried, and which ones have you never heard of. So come back next week as we take a look at Alien 3 for the NES. Have a good night everyone, and cheers.